Hello and welcome back to my channel. Here we continue reading the Dungeon Master Guide. It's the section under Combat. Strike blows. As previously stated, initiative is the key factor as to which side strikes blows first in each melee round. This is modified by creatures with multiple attack routines, whether by natural or magical ability, such as haste. It is also modified by weapon length when one opponent is charging or otherwise closing precipitously into melee contact. Simultaneous initiative. When opponents in melee have tied for initiative, blows, attack routines included, occur simultaneously, except when both opponents are using weapons. Each weapon has a speed factor, and in the case of otherwise simultaneous blows, the opponent with the weapon which has the lower speed factor will strike first. Thus, a blow from a first fist occurs before a blow with a dagger, 1 to 2, a dagger before a short sword, 2 to 3, a short sword prior to a hammer, 3 to 4, and so on. Weapon speed factor. This number is indicative of the wieldiness of any particular weapon, how long it takes to ready the weapon against an opponent, or how long it takes to recover and move it in its attack mode. A pike, for example, is a 13, as it must be lowered, grasped, and then held thrust firmly. Such a weapon is not usable in dungeon settings, or anywhere else without masses of other pikes to support it. In the latter case, an opponent surviving the first attack from the bearer of the pike will likely be able to strike several times before recovery of the pike for a second thrust. This is further detailed below. A two-handed sword with a 10 speed factor likewise requires a lengthy readying time and recovery period after its attack due to its size and weight. When weapon speed factor is the determinant of which opponent strikes first in a melee round, there is a chance that one opponent will be entitled to multiple attacks. Compare the score of the lower factored weapon with that of the higher. If the difference is at least twice the factor of the lower, or 5 or more factors in any case, the opponent with the lower factored weapon is entitled to 2 attacks before the opponent with the higher weapon factor is entitled to any attack whatsoever. If the difference is 10 or greater, the opponent with the lower factored weapon is entitled to 2 attacks before the opponent is allowed to attack, and 1 further attack at the same time the opponent with the higher speed factored weapon finally is allowed to attack. Note that such speed factor considerations are not applicable when either closing or charging to melee, but after an initial round of combat, or in cases where closing charging was not necessary. The speed factor considerations are applicable. Other weapon factor determinants. The speed factor of a weapon also determines when the weapon's strike factor during the course of the round with respect to opponents who are engaged in activity other than striking blows. Thus, suppose side A, which has achieved initiative action for the round, has a magic user engaged in casting a spell. Compare the speed factor of the weapon with the number of segments which the spell will require to cast to determine if the spell or weapon will be cast strike first, subtracting the losing die roll on the initiative die roll from the weapon factor and treating negative results as positive. Example: a sword with a factor of 5, broad or long, is being used by an opponent of a magic user attempting to cast a fireball spell, 3-segment casting time. If the sword-wielding attacker was represented by a losing initiative die roll of 1, the spell will be cast prior to the sword's blow. A 2 will indicate that the spell and the blow are completed simultaneously. A 3 to 5 will indicate that the blow has a chance of striking, if successful to hit roll is made, before the spell is cast, arriving either as the spell is begun or during the first segment of its casting. Suppose instead a dagger were being employed. It has a speed factor of only 2, so it will strike prior to spell completion if the initiative roll which lost was 1 to 4, the adjusted segment indicator being 1, 0, 1, 2 respectively, and simultaneously if the die score was a 5. If the weapon being employed was a two-handed sword, or any other weapon with a speed factor of 10, or 9 for that matter, there would be no chance for the reacting side to strike the spellcaster prior to completion of the fireball. Note that even though a spell takes but one segment to complete, this is 6 seconds, and during that period a reacting attacker might be able to attack the magic user or other spellcaster prior to actual completion of the spell. If combat is simultaneous, there is no modification of the weapon's speed factor. Striking to subdue. This is effective against some monsters and other creatures of humanoid size and type, as indicated in the monster manual under dragons, or herein. Such attacks use the flat butt, haft, pommel, or otherwise non-lethal parts of the weapons concerned, but are otherwise the same as other attacks. Note that unless expressly stated otherwise, all subduing damage is 75% temporary, but 25% of damage is actually damaging to the creature being subdued. This means that if 40 hit points of subduing damage has been inflicted upon an opponent, the creature has actually suffered 10 hit points of real damage. The above, of course, does not apply to player characters. Grapple and hold. See non-lethal and weaponless combat procedures. Special to hit bonuses. The following general rules will be of assistance when you must adjudicate melee combat or missile fire. Opponent encumbered, held by one leg, off balance, etc. +2. Opponent stunned, held by both legs, slowed partially bound, etc. +4. Opponent magically asleep, held, paralyzed, or totally immobile, automatic. Comparison. Melee, magically sleeping or held opponents. Apply bonuses to the chance of the opponent being struck. The opponent will gain no dexterity bonus, of course. In totally immobilized and powerless situations, the opponent can be fully trussed, slain, or whatever in one round, so no bonus need be given. See also melee, flank and rear attacks. Morale. Morale checks are used to determine the amount of will to fight in non-leader NPCs, and can be applied both to henchmen and hirelings of character types and groups of intelligent opponents, monsters. See also loyalty of henchmen and hirelings, obedience and morale. Base unmodified morale score is 50%. Morale checks made when faced by obviously superior force, check each round. 25% of party eliminated or slain, check it +5%. Leader unconscious, check it +10%. 50% plus of party eliminated or slain, check it +15%. Leader slain or deserts, check it +30%. Asterisks, such as in melee, when one force is hitting twice as often as the other. Double asterisks, or individual taking this much personal wound damage. Other morale check modifiers. Each enemy deserting, -5%. Each enemy slain, -10%. Inflicting casualties without receiving any, -20%. Each friend killed, +10%. Taking casualties without receiving any, +10%. Each friend deserting, +15%. Outnumbered and outclassed by 3 or more, +20%. Morale scores. Henchmen or associated creatures. For each creature, take the base morale, loyalty score, and cast percentile dice. Adjust the score for penalties and bonuses, and if the adjusted score is equal to or less than a loyalty score, morale is good. If the number exceeds the loyalty score, the creature will react accordingly to the morale failure table below. Monsters, intelligent. Each monster has a base morale of 50%, +5% per hit die above 1, +1% per hit point above any hit dice. If a morale check is required, scoring and reaction are as stated above for henchmen et al. Morale failure. 1% to 15%, fallback fighting. 16% to 30%, disengage retreat. 31 to 50%, flee and panic. 51% or greater, surrender. The difference between the maximum score needed to retake morale and the number actually rolled as adjusted is the percentage of morale failure. Pursuit and evasion of pursuit. There are 2 cases of pursuit and evasion of pursuit. The first is underground situations, and the second is in outdoor settings. There are various special circumstances which pertain to each case, so each will be dealt with separately. Pursuit and evasion in underground settings. When player characters with attendant hirelings and or henchmen, if any, elect to retreat or flee from an encounter with a monster or monsters, a possible pursuit situation arises. Whether or not pursuit will actually take place is dependent upon the following. 1. If the matrix or key states that the monsters in question will pursue, or if in the monster manual so states, then pursuit will certainly occur. 2. If the monsters or monsters encountered are semi-intelligent or hungry, angry, aggressive, and are trained to do so, then pursuit will be 80% likely to occur. D10, 1 through 8. 3. If the monster or monsters encountered are of low intelligence but otherwise suit the qualifications of 2 above, then pursuit will occur with the following probabilities. A. If the party outnumbers the potential pursuers, then pursuit is 20% likely. B. If the party is about as numerous as the potential pursuers, then pursuit is 40% likely. C. If the party is outnumbered by the potential pursuers, then pursuit is 80% likely. D. If the condition C exists and furthermore the potential pursuers consider themselves as greatly superior to the party, then pursuit is 100% certain. Pursuit will have 3 separate cases. 1. The pursued are faster than pursuers. Unless there are extenuating circumstances, such as Ranger NPC or an invisible stalker or slithering tracker pursuing, then pursuing will end as soon as any one of the following conditions is met. A. The pursued are in sight but over 100-foot distance, or B. The pursued are out of sight and were over 50-foot distant when so left the perception of the pursuer, or C. Pursuit has continued over 5 rounds and the pursuer has not gained perceptibly upon the pursuit. 2. The pursued are of equal speed to the pursuers. As in case 1 above, pursuit will end as soon as any one of the following conditions are met. A. The pursued are in sight but over 100-foot distant, or B. The pursued are out of sight and were over 80-foot distant when they left the perception of the pursuer. C. Pursuit has continued over 1 turn and the pursuer has not gained perceptibly upon the pursued. 3. The pursuer is faster than the pursued. The pursuit will be broken off only if one of the following occurs. A. The pursued are out of sight and were over 200-foot distant when they left the perception of the pursuer, or B. The pursuer is unable to continue due to reasons of physical endurance. Modifiers to pursuit. There are several circumstances which affect the pursuer. These are 1. Barriers. Physical or magical barriers will slow or halt pursuit, i.e. a locked portal, a broken bridge, a wall of fire, etc. 2. Distractions. Actual or magic distractions will be from 10 to 100% likely to cause pursuit to falter or cease altogether. For example, a dancing light spell moving away from a fleeing party, which has extinguished its light sources, might distract pursuers, just as a phantasmal force of a strong helper joining the pursued might cause the pursuers to cease pursuit. Similarly, if the pursued passed through or near some other creature which would be hostile to the pursuing force, or at least not friendly to the pursuers, then it is quite possible that the creatures pass through and the pursuers would become embroiled. Note well, the likelihood of any distraction being successful is a matter for individual adjudication by the Dungeon Master, using AD&D principles and common sense as they apply to the particular circumstances prevailing. There are also 2 subcases here. A. Food. Food, including rations and a wine, will be from 10% to 100% likely to distract pursuers of low intelligence or below, providing the food wine is what they find palatable. Roll a d10 to find the probability, unless you have a note as to how hungry or food-orientated the creatures are. Add 10% to the result for every point of intelligence below 5, and give 100% probability for non-intelligent creatures pursuing. If probability is under 100%, roll the d10 a second time, and if the result is equal to or less than the probability determined, then the pursuers break off pursuit for 1 round, while the food wine is consumed. B. Treasure. Treasure, including precious metals, gems, jewelry, rare stuffs such as ivory or spices, valuable items, and a magic, will be 10 to 100% likely to cause pursuers of low or greater intelligence to be distracted. Pursuers of low intelligence will have an additional 10% per 10 items, regardless of actual value, dropped, i.e. 20 copper pieces, have a 20% additional probability of causing a distraction. The value of items dropped, known or presumed or potential, will likewise cause pursuers of average or greater intelligence to be more likely to be distracted. For each 100 gold pieces value or potential value, add 10% to base probability. Roll the d10 a second time to see if potential and actual interest are the same, just as is done when food is used as a possible distraction. Note, however, that very small items of value, notably gems and the like, would have a chance of going completely unnoticed in the heat of pursuit. If success occurs, the pursuer will be distracted for 1 round, or the length of time necessary to gather up the treasure, whichever is greater. Multiple choice. It will most often come to pass that the pursued take a route which enables them to cause the pursuer to have to make decisions as to which direction the pursued took in their flight. Thus, at a branching passage where there are 3 possible ways which could have been taken, there are a basic 2 in 3 chance that the pursuer will take the wrong passage. Likewise, if there are a door and a passage, there is a 1 in 2 chance of wrong choice. This base chance assumes that the pursuer cannot see the pursued when the choice is made, that sound does not reveal the direction of flight, that smell does not reveal the direction of flight, nor do any other visual, audio, or olfactory clues point to the escape path. As DM, you will have to adjudicate such situations as they arise. The following guidelines might prove helpful. Light. Straight line of sight is near infinite. Any corner cuts distance to 60 feet. Noise. Characters in metal armor can be heard for 90 feet. Hard boots can be heard at 60 feet. Relatively quiet movement can be heard at 30 feet. Odors. Normal scent can be detected by creatures hunting or tracking by scent for several hours, even in a dungeon setting. Scent can be masked with various things: mustard powder, oil of citronella, crushed stinging nettles, etc. Building interiors. Treat these settings the same as the one underground, as applicable. Procedure for determination of evasion underground. If it is discovered that a pursuit situation exists and the player party elects to evade rather than confront pursuers, then record the relative speed of pursued and pursuer. Move the pursued party as many tens of feet as their slowest member is able to travel, and likewise move the pursuing party as many tens of feet as its fastest member can travel, noting positions of slower members in it, if any, as well. This movement is accomplished on the map, of course. 3 such movement phases are, for game purposes, equal to 1 round. At the end of any movement portion where any number of the pursued party is within 10 foot or less of any number of the pursuing party, confrontation must take place between the concerned members of the party. At this point, the remainder, if any, of the pursued party may elect to stop flight or continue evasion attempts as they wish. Also, at the end of each movement portion, it is necessary to check the 3 separate pursuit cases and any pursuit modifiers to see if the pursued party has succeeded in evading the pursuers. Keep track not only of the route of flight, but also of the amount of game time spent, as some pursuit will automatically cease after a set period without confrontation. Mapping during flight. No mapping is ever possible. Give no distance measures in moving the pursued. Give no compass directions either. Pursuit and evasion in outdoor settings. Pursuit in outdoors is generally similar to that in settings underground or indoors. The 3 general rules of likelihood of pursuit apply. However, pursuit will certainly continue until evasion is successfully accomplished. In outdoor settings, evasion is accomplished in a different manner, the variables being the relative speed of movement and the size of parties concerned, and the type of terrain over which pursuit takes place. Available light is also a factor. Base chance of evading pursuit outdoors, 80%. Movement speed adjustment. Pursued is faster, plus 10%. Both parties are of equal speed, 0%. Pursuer is faster, minus 20%. Terrain adjustment. Plain, desert, open water, minus 50%. Scrub, rough, hills and marsh, plus 10%. Forest, mountains, plus 30%. Size of parties involved adjustment. Pursued party totals fewer than 6 creatures, plus 10%. Pursued party totals 6 to 11 creatures, 0%. Pursued party totals 12 to 50 creatures, minus 20%. Pursued party totals over 50 creatures, minus 50%. Pursuing party totals fewer than 12 creatures, minus 20%. Pursuing party totals 12 to 24 creatures, 0%. Pursuing party totals over 24 creatures, plus 10%. Available light adjustment. Light equal to full daylight, minus 30%. Light equal to twilight, minus 10%. Light equal to bright moonlight, 0%. Light equals to starlight, plus 20%. Light equal to dark night, plus 50%. Procedure for determination of evasion outdoors. Upon encountering creatures from which the player party flees in order to evade, determine if a condition of surprise exists. If the player party has surprised the creature encountered, evasion is automatic. If no surprise exists, then follow the procedure below. If the party encountering the creature is surprised, then no evasion is possible and the confrontation is unavoidable. Find the chance for evasion by adjusting the base chance according to variables. The pursued party rolls percentile dice, and if the number generated is less than or equal to the adjusted base chance of evasion, then they have had immediate success at eluding the pursuers. Otherwise, pursuit continues until the pursuers are faster than the pursued and can close within 1 hour, in which case confrontation must take place. Continuing pursuit requires an evasion check every game hour. After the initial check each game hour, another must be made just as is initially done, with the added stipulation that any result of 0% or less, immediate confrontation and no further chance of evasion. Special note regarding fatigue. No rules for exhaustion and fatigue are given here because of the tremendous number of variables, including the stamina of the characters and the creatures involved. Thus, characters mounted on horses have gradually slowing movement, but this is not a factor unless pursuing creatures tire more or less rapidly than do the mounts. You must judge these factors in a case of continuing pursuit. Fatigue merely slows movement and reduces combat effectiveness. Exhaustion will generally require a day of complete rest to restore the exhausted creatures. Always bear in mind that humans inured to continuous running, for example, can do so for hours without noticeable fatigue, i.e. those of Apache and Zulu warriors, etc. Do not base your judgment on the typical modern specimen. Melee. The term melee includes striking with bodily weapons such as teeth, fangs, tusks, tushes, claws, nails, talons, paws, etc. It also includes striking with various objects and weapons. The combat tables are used for determination of hits, and the amount of damage scored is given in either the monster manual or the player's handbook for weapons. It also includes non-lethal and weaponless combat procedures. While combat includes melee, melee does not include such facets of combat as missile fire, spell casting, etc. In general, the procedure followed in melee is explained under encounters, combat and initiative, or non-lethal and weaponless combat procedures. Special considerations are given here. Number of opponents per figure. Physical size and space will dictate limitation upon the number of opponents able to engage a single figure in melee. If official Advanced Dungeons & Dragons miniature figures are used to represent the creatures involved in the melee, then these miniatures will dictate the number of opponents which can be involved. Beware of using other fantasy miniature figures, as most of them are not designed to this specific scale and do not conform to the standards of the Monster Manual, or even necessarily conform to 25mm scale. In other cases, use the following rule of thumb. 1. If the single figure is S, 4 size M or 2 size L figures are all that can attack it under optimum conditions during any single round. 6 size S figures can attack it, however space permitting. 2. If the single figure is size M, it can be attacked by a maximum of 8 size S opponents, 6 size M, or 4 size L. 3. If the single figure is size L, a maximum of 12 size S, 8 size M, or 6 size L figures can engage it at one time. Modifiers are impossible to detail fully, as they include the physical circumstances prevailing at the time. It is obvious that a figure in a narrow passage or in the corner can be attacked only from a limited front. Similarly, the shape of the single figure and the attackers will be a factor, as a giant snake has more body space subject to attack than does a giant, unless the attackers are able to fly or otherwise attack the entire vertical surface of the giant. Any long-bodied creature has more area open to attack, and wide-bodied creatures, or those which employ some natural body weaponry which requires contact with the opponent, will be more restricted with respect to the number of attacks possible, viz. How many constrictor snakes can effectively attack an opponent. Two basic grid systems are shown below, one with hexagons, one with squares. These grids demonstrate how multiple opponents engage a single figure. See also flank and rear attacks hereafter. To determine the number of opponents which can attack the single defender, use squares or hexes of 1 inch per face for 25mm scale, or you may simply view the illustrations used above and mentally visualize the situation. For example, in the case of a human being attacked by giant rats, 2 of the attackers would certainly be able to fit into each hexagon. If normal rats were attacking, 4 per hex, so 6 would attack frontally, 4 from the flank positions, and 2 from the rear. If these same giant rats were attacking a centaur, for instance, the number of flank attacks would certainly be increased to allow 2 or more hexes, 4 more attackers gaining flank attacks advantage. Special types of attack. Flank attack. All flank attacks negate any defender armor class addition for shield. Attacks against the rear flank, where the opponent is virtually unable to view the attackers, negate dexterity armor class bonus. Rear attack. Opponents attacking from the rear gain a +2 to hit, negate any consideration for shield, and also negate any consideration for dexterity. Stunned, prone, or motionless opponents. Treat all such opponents as if being attacked from the rear, but in this case, the 2 hit bonus is +4 rather than +2. Magically sleeping or held opponents. If a general melee is in progress and the attacker is subject to enemy actions, then these opponents are automatically struck by any attack to which they would normally be subject, and the maximum damage possible according to the weapon type is inflicted each time such as an opponent is so attacked. The number of attacks or attack routines possible against such an opponent is twice the number normally allowed in a round. Otherwise, such opponents may be automatically slain, or bound as appropriate to materials at hand and size, at a rate of 1 per round. Note that this does not include normally sleeping opponents. See Assassin's Table for assassinations. Invisible opponents. Invisible opponents are always at an advantage. They can only be attacked if they are attacking or otherwise detected somehow. These opponents always cause the attacker to attack at -4 on 2 hit rolls because of the invisibility. They can never be attacked from flank or rear positions unless the attacker can see them. Thus they are, in fact, visible. Important note regarding 2-hit adjustments. Certain spells such as Curse, Prayer, and Protection from Evil adjust the chance to hit of either the attacker or the defender or both. Such changes must be made to the armor class of the figure concerned, not to the dice score rolled in attacking. An inspection of the combat tables will show that the dice roll progression will make some opponents hit-proof if the dice rolls are adjusted downwards rather than the armor class being moved upwards. At some point, the upwards armor class adjustment could also make such opponents virtually invulnerable, but this is less likely and not necessarily undesirable. Example, a reverse bless, a curse, is cast upon opponents. Therefore, the effective armor class of the side which cast the spell will be raised by 1 category, so that a figure normally of armor class 4 will be treated as 3, 3 as 2, etc. By so doing, it is still possible for opponents to roll natural 20s and thus score hits.